When a lunar eclipse paints a shadow across the night sky, what are we actually seeing? Is it a moment of cosmic danger, something to be wary of? Or is it a rare window for some kind of profound spiritual gain? In the Vedic tradition, the answer is, well, it's both. And today we're going to unpack that fascinating contradiction.
So, what's the deal? Is an eclipse a time to lock your doors and hide from these contaminating, demonic forces? Or is it a supercharged opportunity to connect with the divine? This is the core question we're diving into, a real debate that has shaped how people practice their faith for centuries.
All right, so to really get why an eclipse was traditionally seen as such an inauspicious event, we have to go way back. We're talking about a foundational myth, a classic story of gods, demons, and a desperate search for immortality.
So, the story goes like this. There's this demon, Swarpanu, and he's clever. He manages to sneak into the god's line to get a drink of the nectar of immortality. But the sun and moon gods, they spot him. They raise the alarm, and Lord Vishnu just springs into action, slicing the demon in two with his discus. But here's the catch. The nectar had already touched his throat, so both halves of his body become immortal. The head, now called Rahu, develops this eternal grudge and is forever chasing the sun and moon across the sky, trying to swallow them. And when he catches them, that's what we see as an eclipse. Okay, so if you believe a demon is literally attacking the sun or the moon, it makes perfect sense that you'd come up with a set of rules, right? The whole idea was to protect yourself during what was considered a spiritually and even atmospherically contaminated time. And this whole protective period has a name. It's called Sutak. For a lunar eclipse, it kicks in a full 9 hours before the event. The belief is that during Sutak, the atmosphere itself becomes impure, so a whole list of do's and don'ts comes into play to keep those negative effects at bay. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Look at the clear split here. On one side, you have all these things you're not supposed to do. Basically, any normal physical activity like eating, cooking, even sleeping is off limits. The idea is you don't want to ingest or engage with that contaminated energy. But on the other side, spiritual activities aren't just okay, they're actually super recommended. Things like bathing for purification, giving in charity, and especially chanting mantras are thought to be extra powerful during this time. But here's the thing. What if this whole framework of fear and avoidance wasn't the complete picture? An event that happened 540 years ago would challenge everything and turn the entire narrative of the eclipse completely on its head.
So let's go back 540 years. A total lunar eclipse occurred on the full moon night of March 3rd. But this was no ordinary eclipse. It would become famous not for the shadow falling on the moon, but for a divine birth that happened right here on Earth.
And what's wild is that ancient scriptures, like the Vayu Purana, had actually called it. They predicted that a golden-formed divine incarnation, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, would appear on this exact day during the full moon of the month of Falguna. And get this, it seems like it was all part of a divine plan. Lord Chaitanya appears to have timed his own arrival to coincide perfectly with the eclipse. Why? Well, think about it. Tradition already had everybody going to the holy rivers to chant as a protective measure during an eclipse. So he arrived on Earth to the sound of this massive, spontaneous chorus of holy names, the very spiritual practice he came to teach everyone. It was the perfect welcome party.
So as you can probably imagine, this single event just created a huge split in how people thought about eclipses. It basically led to two very different, almost competing ideas about what you should be doing when the moon goes dark. This table just lays it all out, side by side. You've got the Smarta tradition, which holds that classic view. The eclipse is inauspicious, it's contaminating. So temples close their doors, worship stops, and the main goal is just to avoid all that bad energy. But then you have the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, the followers of Lord Chaitanya. For them, the eclipse is the exact opposite. It's highly auspicious. It's a golden opportunity. So temple worship continues, and the focus completely shifts from avoiding something bad to actively engaging in something good through chanting and service.
So just how important was this new idea of uninterrupted devotion? Well, the spiritual masters who followed in Lord Chaitanya's line, let's just say they were absolutely emphatic about it. Listen to this from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura. He makes it so clear. He acknowledges the traditional view, saying, yes, the Smartas see it as inauspicious. But then he says, but for devotees, the instruction is to serve the Supreme Lord as usual and not even worry about what he calls mundane rules.
And if you thought that was clear, check this out. ISKCON's founder, Srila Prabhupada, leaves zero room for interpretation. In a letter, he's just absolute. Seva, that's devotional service, can never be stopped for any reason. And he even specifically calls out cooking, which, if you remember, was one of the biggest no-nos under the old rules.
And you know what? He totally walked the walk. His disciples all remember that during eclipses, it was just business as usual for him. Nothing about his routine changed. Deity worship in the temples, it continued without a single interruption. When a student actually asked him if they should stop the rituals, like other temples were doing, Prabhupada's simple and pretty profound answer was just, why? For him, that spiritual connection was always on, and it was above any kind of external material event.
So really, the big takeaway here is that this perspective completely transforms the eclipse. The shadow of that demon, Rahu, is no longer some threat you need to fear. It becomes this incredibly potent spiritual opportunity. The scriptures say that any spiritual practice you do during an eclipse, chanting, charity, meditation, is magnified thousands of times over. It's like a spiritual power-up, not a time to power down. And all of this leaves us with one final thought to ponder. When the physical light of the sun or the moon is temporarily covered up, what is that moment really inviting us to do? Maybe, just maybe, it's an invitation to turn our focus away from the world outside and instead seek out a different kind of light, an internal one. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.